Hello, today we're going to be talking about the coronavirus situation south of Russia, in the Central Asian nation of Turkmenistan.
This program is brought to you by Big Turk, the leading chocolate bar in Turkmenistan, and also the choice of Dirk Diggler.
The country ranks 179th out of 180 countries in freedom of information, right there with North Korea.
September 10th, 2020. Deadly rumor has Turkmen citizens with COVID symptoms avoiding hospitals. There were reports on September 7th of Turkmen officials approving an amendment to the law that obligates people who suspect they have contracted a dangerous infectious disease to seek medical treatment, and also requires people in hospitals with such illnesses not to leave medical facilities. That seems logical and hardly worth including in the criminal code, unless you had heard the rumor. Whose story to believe? Telling citizens to seek medical help if they have been infected with a dangerous illness might seem unnecessary, especially with the coronavirus pandemic affecting almost every country in the world. Almost every country. Turkmenistan officially does not have any COVID-19 cases, though they have been warning of potentially harmful effects from dust in the air and advising people to wear masks. But there is an abundance of anecdotal evidence that suggests the illness is raging out of control in the country. If one believes the Turkmen authorities claim that there is no coronavirus or any other dangerous infectious illness present in Turkmenistan, then there should be no need for a sudden amendment to the law that not only obligates citizens to seek medical treatment, but allows punishment of 2 to 5 years in prison for those who violate the law. Anecdotal evidence, essentially testimony from, now, dozens of people inside Turkmenistan, suggests hospitals are already overcrowded due to a sharp increase in respiratory illnesses that many believe is the coronavirus, or at least the pneumonia caused by that virus. There are no free beds, and the relatives of those who fall seriously ill must pay bribes to have their kin admitted to the hospital, and also to get them a respirator. If one believes this anecdotal evidence, then people seem willing, even anxious, to be admitted to hospitals for treatment, but the healthcare system is overwhelmed. Turkmen authorities have spent years trying to prevent the outside world from knowing what is truly happening inside the country, and that often leaves the outside with only stories and rumors about what is going on in Turkmenistan. It is impossible to independently verify even something like Turkmenistan's healthcare system collapsing. The injection. There is a new rumor that has been making its way around Turkmenistan for several weeks, though it is difficult to believe because it is horrible even to consider. The independent Turkmen news website reported on September 1st about Major Sapa Gurbangulov of the Velkobazar district. About Major Sapa Gurbangulov of the Velkobazar District Police. He is said to have become ill at the end of June and eventually was taken to the Regional Infectious Diseases Hospital in Mary, where he was treated for a high fever and later fluid in the lungs, though he did not seem to be in serious condition. Gurbangulov's condition suddenly took a turn for the worse, though, and he had breathing problems before being transferred to another hospital in Yolatan. On July 3rd, he phoned his wife to tell her to come quickly and get him out of the hospital, the website reported. His wife could not enter the hospital because of quarantine rules and called her husband to tell him. He reportedly told her, "Then they will give me an injection now and kill me." A half hour later, someone from the hospital staff informed his wife that Gurbangulov had died.
The bodies of those dying of COVID-19-like lung problems are being delivered to their relatives in plastic bags.
People from around Turkmenistan have been contacting RFE-RL's Turkmen service, known locally as Azadlik, and other media outlets with similar stories. Patients are admitted to hospitals with symptoms like those that come with the coronavirus. They die within a couple of days, sometimes within a few hours of arriving at the hospital, and relatives have to sign a disclaimer saying they have no complaints against doctors or the government in order to receive the body. Dozens of people have contacted Azadlik about this, and they all believe these patients, who showed signs of being infected with COVID-19, were given injections that killed them. The bodies are wrapped in plastic, and anyone who comes to claim one of these bodies is ordered not to unwrap the body and to bury it immediately.
Coronavirus does not officially exist in Turkmenistan, although doctors and gravediggers may have a different story. With growing concern about the rising coronavirus in Turkmenistan and authorities remaining in denial about it, villagers have been ordered to keep graves flat so that satellites cannot take pictures of them.
Again, whether these stories are true or not, the fact is that such tales are spreading around Turkmenistan and people are now afraid to go to the hospital if they are ill, especially if they think they have the coronavirus. The amendment that not only requires citizens to seek medical treatment if they believe they have a dangerous infectious illness, but, more importantly, also forbids people from leaving the hospital without being officially discharged, will only add to people's worries that if they are admitted to a hospital and do have COVID-19, they could be killed. The Turkmen people are sure the government is lying to them about many things, including about the absence of the coronavirus, and now they are also worried the authorities may kill them if they are unfortunate enough to actually be infected with the disease. This hospital scenario is remarkably similar to that movie The Island, starring Ewan McGregor and Scarlett Johansson, where people are told they will get out and get a trip to the island, where in reality they are given an injection and killed.
Turkmenistan remains one of the most repressive countries in the world, right with North Korea, which, incidentally, are the two countries that have zero coronavirus cases remaining, other than, of course, several tiny island nations in Oceania. Turkmenistan is ruled by President Gurbanguly Berdimuhamedov. At the opening of a new hospital in November, President Gurbanguly Berdimuhamedov said no coronavirus cases had been reported thanks to preventative measures. Social media users who counter that view are dealt with swiftly, say journalists and observers. Keep graves flat. Turkmenistan has widely been criticized for human rights abuses and imposed severe restrictions on foreign travel for its citizens. The country has virtually closed to independent scrutiny. Media and religious freedoms are subject to draconian restrictions. Human rights defenders and other activists face the constant threat of government reprisal, imprisonment, torture, and even death. Reports indicate that workers were required to work for a 25-day shift at the Ashgabat Infectious Disease Hospital and for no reason whatsoever bring their cell phone. Nurses and doctors had to sign a non-disclosure agreement.
As a result of preventive measures, the country has registered no coronavirus cases so far, which is a positive indicator and our great achievement.
Hospital workers in Choginli claim the first coronavirus infections were last February, where 2 patients were treated under strict isolation. Some hospital employees were talking to RFERL about the 2 patients and saying that hospital staff, with a few rare exceptions, were not being told about this.
At the government session in early December, dedicated to economic performance of 11 months of 2020, all members of the Cabinet of Ministers reported achievements in this sphere. They emphasized the enhancing GDP growth by 5.8% and the growth of the retail sales compared to the same period of last year by 18%. Moreover, the pandemic impact on the national economy, as well as the global economic crisis related to COVID-19, were never mentioned at the government session. Nothing was said about the decline of transboundary trade and reduction of foreign economic activity and the impact of these factors on the national economy in general. Neither the government actions nor programs related to the pandemic and its prevention were mentioned.
Flights to China and other countries were cancelled last February, and all international flights were diverted from the capital to Turkmenistan, where a quarantine was created. As part of the ongoing effort to limit the spread of COVID-19, authorities have extended the suspension of flights until at least January 31st. Domestic rail and bus services also remain suspended until at least January 31st, and borders with Afghanistan, Iran, Uzbekistan, and Kazakhstan remain closed indefinitely until further notice.
Excess mortality. In the meantime, information about many new cases having symptoms similar to COVID-19 detected in various regions of the country was received since March 2020. The authorities gave strict instructions to all hospitals from the very beginning. Never diagnose coronavirus infection, replacing it with the diagnosis pneumonia caused by flu, cold, and relate all lethal cases to cardiac failure, acute hepatitis, cerebral hemorrhage. In other words, the diseases that could lead to fulminant disease and sudden death.
Travel information for if you ever do go to Turkmenistan. Try to eat only cooked food in Turkmenistan and peel all fruits and vegetables. Typhoid is common there and can be found in salads and cold meat. Do not drink tap water anywhere in Turkmenistan, as it may contain traces of metal. Avoid ice cubes. The CDC recommends measles, mumps, and rubella, diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis, chickenpox, polio, and a yearly flu shot. Tuberculosis is endemic, HIV is present, hepatitis A, B, also codeine is illegal. How to avoid trouble in Turkmenistan. There are a few things travelers can do to avoid trouble. Here are a few travel safety tips to keep in mind. Be careful when taking photographs, as it is illegal to photograph sensitive sites, including military areas, transport hubs, and government buildings. If you are traveling with a driver or tour guide, ask their advice before taking pictures. Smoking is banned in all public spaces. However, there are designated spots for smokers to light up. Gifting tobacco or tobacco-related products is forbidden. Avoid public displays of affection and be aware that homosexuality is illegal. After discussing sensitive topics or revealing sensitive information, and assume the government is monitoring any conversations you may have, this may seem a little over the top, but be careful. Vodka terrorism. Turkmenistan does not suffer the same terrorism that neighboring countries are fighting, such as the Islamic Movement of Uzbekistan, the Islamic Jihad Union, Al-Qaeda, and the Eastern Turkestan Islamic Movement. They do, however, suffer from vodka terrorism. Vodka is the drink of choice here, and low employment, poverty, and of course coronavirus have led to a boom in alcoholism and of course violent events. Vodka terrorism is the name given to a local phenomenon where a local Turkmen either wants to fight you or rob you after drinking too much vodka. This can happen at day or night and is most likely to occur on trains. There are no travel zones, including the border regions on Uzbekistan, Iran, and Afghanistan. Also Dashikos, the entire region is restricted.
At the same time, the authorities banned all funeral ceremonies, including ablutionary rites and funeral feasts. Burial ceremony was held under the control of police officers, and the bodies were buried in sealed polyethylene sheeting. When ACCA media analyzed satellite images, it detected a lot of new graves in the cemeteries of Turkmenistan, and the security agencies demanded that the graves should be flat and unnoticed from above. An official of one of the health ministry departments said to CABAR Asia anonymously that the authorities were absolutely unprepared to such situation and its fast development.
In Mary Province, all public sector workers were ordered to undergo mandatory medical checkups. No reason was given, but the employees were ordered to pay from their own pockets. Turkmen authorities do not want to admit the presence of the virus, and if the WHO tested Turkmen samples, they very well may find it. The WHO's second mission to Turkmenistan fizzled or was delayed indefinitely.
The infectious diseases hospital in the northern suburb of Ashgabat was filled immediately. Then, general hospitals were turned into infectious diseases hospitals. When they were crowded, the authorities provided once inhabited area, a campus of one of foreign construction companies that left Turkmenistan because of the dispute with the government, to serve as a hospital. In the provinces, the situation was very critical. Hospitals were filled in the very first days. People were not admitted and returned to homes. It was a bit of luck to provide them with basic medications, but they ran out soon. It's impossible to determine absolute figures of new cases and lethal cases. The authorities banned to diagnose coronavirus, but almost every month, our health ministry's statistics records the rise by 25 to 35% of deaths in certain months compared to average monthly indicators of previous years, he said.
If you look carefully at the design on the targets, it almost looks like Walter White from Breaking Bad. See the hat there? The president has books which recommend burning herbs to prevent infectious diseases. He also has books on the advantages of red peppers. Red peppers have long been used for medicinal purposes in Turkmenistan. President Gurbanguly Berdimuhamedov claims that licorice root helps stop coronavirus from developing. Personally, I recommend investing in Sambuca.
Lockdown under a ban. The reluctance of the authorities to admit the presence of COVID-19 in the country was seen not only in public denial, but in a ban on wearing face masks in public places, for which people were fined to avoid the spread of panic. Moreover, all spring up to the end of June, Turkmenistan was holding mass events with forced involvement of military conscripts, pupils and students, employees of state institutions. One of the UN mission's officers in Turkmenistan, Geldi Kolmakov, not his real name, said bitterly that everyone understood that lockdown measures in Turkmenistan, such as social distancing on transport, in education institutions, shopping malls, as well as obligatory wearing of face masks, were delayed. One of local observers who knows the domestic political environment of the Turkmen government firsthand said categorically that all motives for the denial of the coronavirus presence were related exclusively to the ego of the president. Before coming to the position of the head of state, Berdimuhamedov was the health minister and supervised the state program designed to reform the whole healthcare system, which turned out to be unprepared for such hardships. The authorities forced themselves into a corner. The individual political denial of the pandemic in the country has led to the paralysis of the will among medical officials and to the paralysis of the whole healthcare system. How to fight what doesn't exist in the country, what is banned from above in the country. As if COVID-19 was circulating. The situation was aggravated by the fact that in 2020, President Berdimuhamedov reached the age of the prophet. He turned 63 on June 29th. Before this date, it was strictly forbidden to speak about the epidemic in Turkmenistan and the pandemic in the world. Officials not only concealed the infection and banned everyone from speaking about it, but also restrained any preventive measures that could reduce new cases, decrease infection rate, thus decreasing the occupancy of hospitals and reducing the death rate. For the same reason, the authorities had sabotaged the visit of the WHO mission to Turkmenistan before the celebration of the president's birthday. The visit of the mission was agreed back in April, but the authorities postponed it all the time, referring to logistics issues. Once the president's birthday was celebrated and the final government session for the 6 months of 2020 was held, the president once again congratulated all with success and good economic performance, sent the government to leave, and took a leave. The next day, the country introduced the mask regime. The authorities started fining for not wearing masks. Mask wearing became mandatory. Other lockdown measures were taken. All bazaars, shopping malls, stores, but supermarkets and essential goods stores were closed. Entry and exit body temperature screening measures were taken in residential areas.
No test, no travel. On Halloween, testing in Turkmenistan for coronavirus came to a stop. You were required to have the test to be able to travel, and without the test, you can't travel.
Long queues and foreign exchange deficit. Inconsistent actions by the authorities crippled the economy. Closure of borders, both at the initiative of neighboring states and by decision of the Turkmen authorities, hit small and medium-sized businesses and a lot of private entrepreneurs, or, simply said, shuttle traders, who earn from transboundary sales. Many entrepreneurs turned bankrupt. Although the authorities supplied enough food for the people delivered by state-run or parastate monopolists who had various preferences, the basic consumer goods prices, especially food prices, rose up uncontrollably. One of the indicators of the situation was the rapid growth of queues for food subsidized by the state. Cheap bread, flour, vegetable oil, cheap meat, and imported chicken legs. At some places, queues for food were night-long, even when stores were closed. People continued to stand in queues and register the people in them. The authorities disperse the queues and get them to move closer to the back entrance so that people are not visible both in the store and around the main entrance. A seller of garments at the Uptovi Bazaar of Ashgabat said, "We used to go to Turkey and China to select the goods and paid there. We have developed our links and mechanisms for years. Now it has all gone down the drain. Even reliable partners abroad cannot send the goods to us as we cannot pay for it. The banking system of Turkmenistan is also paralyzed. The country has a shortage of foreign currency. The official conversion of manat to dollars is banned in the country, and it's impossible to transfer money via banks. Even Western Union accepts only $100 transfers per month. What kind of business can we have here?"
The manat is the currency of Turkmenistan. 1 manat is worth 75 Canadian cents.
The number of the poor and beggars in the streets of Ashgabat has increased. People scavenge the rubbish, which was never seen before. The crime rate, generally street robberies and home burglaries, has increased significantly. We detained former habitual offenders and long-term drug addicts who were released from prison for a day to a police department or a police station to stop them from stealing. They have no jobs to earn a living. What else can they do? We give them food in the police station because the state pays for food for the detainees, he said. Meanwhile, the government shows no reaction to the aggravating economic situation. The economy of Turkmenistan had faced hard times before the pandemic. The country has seen the decline in recession for 4 years due to the sharp drop of energy resource prices, mainly the gas. The oil and gas sales amount to about 80% of foreign currency supply to the country, and its volumes gradually decrease. For this reason, foreign exchange cash and its free convertibility for the people is forbidden. For legal entities who are involved in foreign economic activity, the maximum 10% of the claimed amount may be converted on a first-come, first-served basis. There are plans, but they are not. The government has approved 2 plans to fight the consequences of coronavirus infection, but these plans were never promulgated. The society knows nothing about their contents, and the authorities give no comments concerning their implementation. According to a high-ranking official of a tax office of Ashgabat, the refusal to admit the epidemic in the country allows the authorities to ignore the worsening economic position of the people, without the need to introduce the system of support to low-income population, or to provide economic support to small and medium-sized businesses. They have no spare cash, no sales, they cannot throw their goods off, so they have to pay, run into debts, go bankrupt. Small and medium-sized businesses in the country have already died or are about to die. Tax proceeds have declined by 60 to 70% compared to last year. It will take years to recover. The ex-official of the Ministry of Finance and Economy of Turkmenistan said that the agency developed measures to support people and businesses. However, their measures were rejected and the department that was in charge was eliminated. It's all about politics. The authorities deliberately do not want to admit there is epidemic in the country and the need to introduce emergency measures of economic and financial support. If a problem is not admitted, there's no need to respond to it, he said. This creates additional threats not only for the Turkmen society, but also for close neighbors, and for the whole world amid the pandemic, which makes Turkmenistan an unpredictable partner.
Well, that's all we have here for today. We hope you learned a lot, and make sure to tune in next time. Thank you.